So today's talk will be on circular economy approach to women empowerment through reusing treated rural wastewater using CW for reuse, constructed wetland technology. So when our chairman, Dr. Mohan, told me that Dr. Shyam will be the guest speaker in this week, my memories went back. I think you are high. I don't know how many of you are able to see a seat here. You know, this is the agenda of the conference I met on December 7th, 2001, 19 years back. That's where I first met Dr. Shyam sir in Pune. It is a reuse of treated wastewater and sludge for agriculture in South Asia. I'm having the complete proceedings and everything. So I went there and I find in Team A, both myself and Shyam sir are together in that team. Right, it's a great memory to recall. 19 years back, exactly one day before. It is December 5th. That is December 7th. So, sir, thanks for meeting you again after 19 years and having you in. I'm privileged. We are privileged. The entire team is privileged to see you again and again. Thanks to Professor Mohan. In fact, in the past 3-4 years, in IWA conferences everywhere in Coimbatore and everywhere, we are seeing you. So, when we come to this title of circular economy, when I see your title, I can see 3 to 4 subtitles, sir. All subtitles are very important. Circular economy is a separate tree now. It is every the whole world is talking about circular economy, and you are talking in the women empowerment. That is what everybody is talking. That is another important point. Then you are talking about the reuse of wastewater, and also not on the urban side. It is a rural wastewater. It is another important one. And finally, constructed wetland. I think Jayan gave me only 3 minutes for you for these opening remarks. With these remarks, we are really happy to listen to your talk, and I would like to introduce our chairman, Dr. S. Mohan, who is an institute chair professor of IIT Madras, and she is the chairman of the State Expert Appraisal Committee of Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board, one of the senior most professor, and this team is there as an international water association for the past 2.5 years, and we are trying to introduce what he is doing to introduce so many latest technologies to the youngsters, so that it will be good for them to take up the very important domain of water and environment. That's what he is doing with respect to research, academic research, sponsored research, and extension activities, and everything. And also he is guiding almost more. He has already guided almost 30 students, and he used to be the examiner for so many students and did project for the Department of Science and Technology in everywhere. Thanks. We are really privileged to have all big people of the water in today's evening. Now I request Professor Morgan to give a word and introduce the chief guest and his classmates to the forum. Thank you, sir.
Uh, Thank you, Professor Chandran, and I'm also very glad to join with him to welcoming all of you for this webinar. And it is my pleasant duty to talk about Professor Siam Aslekar, to introduce you a great speaker. More than a great speaker, he is a very great human. So I always enjoy his company whenever there is a possibility. He always likes to be with the people and so on. And the second point with him is whatever he does, it is more on practical point of view. Okay. So in fact, I still recall the days when we were in IAC Bangalore, where we were sitting in the class of wastewater treatment. So one and two. So two classes we were together. He was in chemical engineering, but I was in civil engineering. But the common thing which has brought together was that wastewater treatment. Uh, Professor Siam Asolekar is currently serving as the MPCB chair professor at the Environmental Science and Engineering Department at IIT Bombay. He also served as the head of the department during May 2006 to June 2009 and the president of Indian Environmental Association during 2003 to 2005. Professor Asalekar holds 2 degrees in chemical engineering, an undergraduate from the Institute of Chemical Technology, formerly UDCT Mumbai, and a master's degree from IISc Bangalore, 1985. Subsequently, he went to US to obtain again one more MS and PhD in environmental engineering from Syracuse University and University of Iowa, respectively. After pursuing his postdoctoral studies at Harvard University in Boston, he returned to India in January 1993 to teach at IIT Bombay. Professor Asalekar's basic interest is in teaching undergraduate and postgraduate students as well as industrial and regulatory professionals. Some of the courses recently developed by him include environmental change and sustainable development, municipal and industrial wastewater management and reuse, environmental law and policy for postgraduate, and environmental studies for the 4th-year undergraduate engineering student. He is author of 3 books, 4 patents, policy documents, training manual, chapters of books, and several research papers in international and national journals. His expertise for a goes for a long, but I would say that he works on more on waste minimization, cleaner and greener technologies, eco-industrial networking, and corporate social responsibility, and especially on common effluent treatment plan, and achieving near zero emissions and improvement in environmental performance through application of innovative preventive environmental management of the industry. So there are the list goes for a long, and more importantly, he works on green buildings, green habitat, and regeneration of ponds, lakes, rivers, and wetlands. I had a chance to witness the regeneration of a lake, which is in the heart of the Jaipur city. So that I really appreciate him. So I think he is going to deliver a good lecture, and all of you, I'm sure that you will get more benefit. Once again, I join Chandran to welcome all the participants of this, especially Dr. GVS from Ministry of Environment Forest and Professor Hadas and other professors from different disciplines for this seminar. So over to Professor Syam Asali.
This is a great opportunity and honor for me professionally, especially acceding to the requirement of my dear friend Mohan is always a pleasure. He always puts together very excellent opportunities for me. And for years together, I have been his students and his friends in Coimbatore, in IIT Madras, and places. Thank you and Professor Chandran Sundarraj for considering me worthy of giving this presentation. And it is a great opportunity for all of us to kind of think together about the entire business of treating wastewater. Treating wastewater has been a red on anybody's balance sheet, whether it is a municipality or industry. But past 20 years, some of us, including Professor Mohan, myself, we have been insisting that it should be brought into the realm of reuse and recycle and kind of get something gainful out of it, which today's new dictum for it is circular economy. But people have been practicing these kind of ideas with clean technology, waste minimization, recycle, reuse, with different names. Preventive environmental management. There are many names to this particular idea. And I am basically going to work around this particular concept of circular economy and how it can be implemented, brought in to reality in the field of wastewater treatment. There are 2-3 things that I would like to kind of place in front of you before we jump into more technology or more case study oriented presentation. I am setting up my alarm for 45 minutes. As soon as it goes, I will try to wrap up and then open it for more discussion. I'm equally curious to listen to you, get to know what are your comments and what you think is about circular economy related to wastewater reuse. The technology that my group has developed, constructed wetland for reuse, CW for reuse. This is just a prop that, like any dancer or any performer on the stage, has to have some prop in the hand. It may be an umbrella, or it may be a handkerchief, or in my case, it is something related to my technology, constructed wetland technology. So this is just a prop for discussion, just for a song and dance, but that is not important. What is more important is the idea that we reuse water and do something gainful with it. With that, I am going to the next slide, which is my brief, and I'm going to place it in front of you in just a couple of slides. It is basically where we are and how probably we have gotten here, where we stand today. I do not see environment in isolation with the total socio-economic scenario. I think these things are interrelated, and you get what you deserve in terms of political system. Similarly, you get what you deserve in terms of ecological and environmental systems, and they are all dynamically interrelated. And this is basically my brief about how we got here. The first point is that unemployment plus shrinking agricultural participation, and combined with the increasing disparity in the society, is really to blame right away in the country like India, which is having anywhere between 130 crore or 140 crore population. And you can imagine the entire last decade we have been facing a great unemployment, and the things are becoming from bad to worse, especially in the light of what we are seeing today in the name of COVID. So that is one real challenge in front of us, and that is definitely impacting our environment right away. Disregard for public participation in decision making and generally leads to disregard for dissent. And I think this is a very important thing that one has to keep in mind, that as I told you, that you get the polity that you deserve, and then you get an environment also that you deserve. So that is where there is a role of cooperative action. And I am simply trying to highlight that we cannot afford to disregard public participation, which we have done, and which is leading to disregard for the dissent. Rationalization of temporary measures is another thing which is extremely bad for environment and ecology. Everybody tries to be extremely smart and tries to find so-called via media, which often compromises the environment and ecosystem, and which tries to put the temporary interest, the timely interest on the anvil, and that is how we are pursuing our development. And as a result, obviously, too much of development emphasis you are seeing in every walk of life. And this is not happening only in India, but it is happening internationally, and obviously, which is showing the impact on environment and ecosystem. Poor understanding of cause-effect relationship is another very dangerous trend that we are seeing, which is finally leading to what I call it as monument syndrome. That I would be extremely happy to say that, look, in my time, when I'm serving in municipality, or when I'm serving in state, or when I'm serving in center, I have created the longest coastal road, or I created the longest bridge, or I have created the tallest building, or a deepest ground. I don't know what. So you are always trying to show some monument that I have created, and it is a feat of engineering, it is a feat of development, and then that's how every time if somebody claims that kind of thing, the first thing that crosses my mind is that probably there is the slip in a cup and a lip, that perfect relationships are not honored. So thus you actually end up getting a weaker democracy. And you would be surprised why upfront I am saying this, because like all of us, I also believe that democracy definitely supports protection of environment. So when we have weaker democracy, definitely we will that will lead to environmental degradation. However, stronger democracy may not lead to environmental upgradation. And that is where the role of the cerebral activity and deliberate policy making, deliberate actions, participation of all the people who are going to be project affected, stealing the words from environmental impact assessment. So, to have stronger democracy, my brief is that you also need to work towards environmental upgradation. Until you take such action, you will not get the kind of environment that you hope to preserve. And every person, every government, every officer, every politician would like to have better environmental condition. Nobody aims for bad environmental condition. There are so many other walks of life where we have to be better, superior. Only the environment ecosystem can be protected. So there is an emergence of a concept of environmental justice nowadays. And this is not only in India, but all over the world, especially at the Hague, which is the court where the environmental justice is seen in two folds. The first element of environmental justice is justice to humans, and the other element of the justice is justice to ecosystem. And they go hand in hand. So you cannot simply give justice to trees or ocean or whatever, or animals, and then forget human beings, or do vice versa. When you are satisfying both, only then you are really solving the equation for environmental justice. These are two simultaneous equations. They have to be solved with responsibility. So having understood this, the world has come up with the Millennium Development Goals. As we are aware, there is a lot talked about it nowadays, and over the past 15 years, when we India participated in Millennium Development Goals and then Sustainable Development Goals, which I have placed in front of you. First 15 years, 2001 to 2015, we pursued Millennium Development Goals. They were the 10, and now we have 11, 2 dozens combined as they are placed in front of you, where there is nowhere it says that certain level of SO2, certain level of particulate matter, or TDS or TSS or COD. It is talking about so many walks of life, so many issues related to society. And then we are talking about no poverty, zero hunger. My friends, that is the real environmental agenda. And finally, the last goal is participation of all the people together. So we are saying partnership for achieving the goals. So this is the transition from making sure that there is absolutely no poverty and there is zero hunger in the world, and the world is united. India is a signatory. India's performance was good in Millennium Development Goals, and India continues to participate in Sustainable Development Goals. So these are the two programs of United Nations Environment Program, and participating very happily in both. With this, I would just like to show that there are 5 P's that are extremely important if at all we would like to reach what is popularly called as sustainable development. Of course, it is for the protection of planet, but it is also for people. It is also for the prosperity of communities. It is also for achieving peace. And everybody knows you cannot do it until you are becoming partners of each other and share the problems and therefore share the solutions. So this is what is the approach that world has adopted. And I'm very happy that India is a signatory to that, and India is participating very enthusiastically in that. So whatever that we believe internationally, we also need to implement that at a national level, at state level, at gully mohalla level, at ward level in municipality or in village. That is the only brief that I am bringing to you. So obviously in front of us, you all are educated and experienced individuals. So what can I tell you? There are many challenges. Some of the challenges related to water, wastewater, I am only highlighting here. because if we start counting many other challenges, it becomes a very big syllabus. So therefore, I am only restricting it to the challenges related to water system. So municipal sewage and industrial effluents are a greatest challenge for our country today. You know that what is appropriate technology is a bigger question that we need to answer, and there is not only single answer to that. It is not a gas law or a Newton's law. It is a very complicated socio-political philosophical issue, and in history mankind has addressed these questions. Right when we invented fire or wheel, what is the appropriate technology is a question on table for every generation. In our generation too, we are talking about what is appropriate. So in the context of wastewater, drinking water treatment, it is low cost with minimum possible mechanization, simple in operation, suitable for incremental improvement, and recycle and reuse oriented. This is my list, my friends. I have been wrong many times in my life. I can be wrong here also. I'm sure you will be able to add more bullets to it. I'm sure you will be able to remove some of the bullets what I have put and add new ones because they are more appropriate. I'm sure such a discussion is possible, but that is beside the point. I'm just trying to say one has to really make up one's mind and come to terms with what is appropriate. The second challenge is pollution of rivers and urban lakes. This is really a very, very big problem, and which is almost many of the experts in the world believe that not only in India but all over the world, we already have lost the battle. It is impossible to regain the original glory. Our rivers are terribly polluted all over the world, and our lakes are terribly polluted. Just a small anecdote: when I was pursuing my master's degree, that's my second master's degree. Our teacher in environmental chemistry took us to a nearby lake, and we put our bale, took out the water sample, brought it into laboratory, and then on a simple equipment in laboratory, he made us measure the linden pesticide concentration in the lake, and we could measure it with ordinary equipment. So the pollution is to such a level that our drinking water has gone into drinking water bottles, and our rivers are so polluted that the municipalities are trying to be good governing institutions, which are putting the signs, swimming prohibited, fishing prohibited, and this is how you are enjoying the ecosystem around you, where everything that you would like to do is prohibited. So this is the level of the problem of rivers and lakes in the country. We have A, B, C, D classes of river. Very rarely you will be able to show me a stretch of river which qualifies class A. Very, very few points in the river probably match with that. So rivers are polluted. There are 14 major rivers in the country. Almost all are polluted. You know that. The Aviral and Nirmal Ganga was a project with respect to Ganga River Basin Management Plan, which IIT Bombay was the lead institution, and IIT Kanpur was with us, and we initiated this particular project. We worked 5 years, 20 plus crore rupees we used and developed a plan. More than 55 scientists in the country were involved from various 11 institutions, 7 IITs, so on and so forth, and all the who's who in the field of water were involved in this particular project, and we developed a plan which government accepted, and they are trying to implement it. But you know that this is a very big responsibility, and there is a very big problem, and it only shows that which is so gigantic, such a river also can be contaminated by human beings. And to the extent that it is simply impossible, appears impossible to clean it up. Our immediate neighbor of IIT Bombay, our address is Powai, Mumbai 76. Basically, we inherit our name. Powai, name of suburb, is actually because of the Lake Powai here, which I'm showing, which is taken from the top of the buildings in IIT. So you can see the amount of water hyacinth and the amount of the coverage of the paste in the lake is so much that it has become a very big problem. and many of us are trying to work on it, but obviously our efforts are not enough. A lot of political will, social will of municipal corporation, everything is required, and people are trying to kind of contribute the way they could, but the problem is not nearly solved. We have another lake, and currently I am studying these two lakes under some project, which is the Banganga Lake. It is considered one of the holy lakes in Mumbai. It is considered one of the very, very historic ancient lakes, and it is a natural lake, and people come here for taking holy bath. Especially North Indians have a lot of faith in this particular water of this particular lake, because of some epics and myths associated with the lake. And this lake is in middle of South Mumbai, and it is completely encroached upon on the edges by the residential settlements, and a lot of lake area also already is compromised, and the lake is almost like a tank, almost like a the crater in the ground, almost having no ecosystem around surrounding it. So how do you really address the sustainability of such a lake is the project. One lake, Powai Lake, which has some greenery around it, one lake doesn't have any greenery around it. What kind of technology, social, what kind of business model, what kind of management solutions, what kind of reforms in policy are required to save such urban lakes? And that is essentially the topic of my research. But I'm just trying to show you this is a challenge, not only in Mumbai, but everywhere such challenges are there. Challenge number three, obviously, all of you are aware about the macropollutants in water, and the analog of that in the field of air is secondary and tertiary trace pollutants in air. So how to really control them, how to measure them itself is a challenge, and then how to control them is yet another challenge. And because they are not emitted directly by in the source, but they sometimes are formed because of the secondary and tertiary reactions. To control them is a very big issue to start with. And you know that the micropollutants with respect to water are because of our lifestyle, and so many chemicals that we do every day to remain clean, to look beautiful, to make our places more fragrant and habitable, so to speak, lifestyle chemicals for pesticides and so many other things. Those are essentially finally ending up in our food grain, in our fruits, and in our marine life, which comes to our dining table in any way. Micropollutants is a very big problem, even in drinking water, and India has not even begun to address that problem today. So why have we failed in the environmental governance? That is a question that would come to our mind. Are our laws bad? No. Are our people incompetent? I don't believe so. Is there a conspiracy? I don't believe so. I think there are certain philosophical shortcomings. There are certain mismatches, incongruencies that I would like to kind of bring to you. I do not think somebody wants pollution, somebody wants degradation. I don't believe somebody is not able to achieve because they are not competent, nor I think that our laws are so bad that they are anyway ignored. It is not the case. So it is a sum total of so many other factors, which as I always say, some of these factors are standing outside your window, and you need to open the window and peep out and have a good look at them. That is why I'm mentioning it. 2 plus 2 is not equal to 4, my friends, when it comes to environment and ecology. Synergistics of toxicity is an important topic which is completely ignored in our environmental regulation, and that is clearly a very great gap. And it is not because of the rule makers or lawmakers, but it is because of the scientific community has not developed quote unquote Indian data to address this problem. So there is a immense challenge and responsibility on the shoulders of researchers and academicians. Dislocation or immobilization of pollution is called as treatment. And that is true many cases in terms of wastewater treatment, what to do with the sludge in air treatment, air pollution control, or what to do with the sludge generated in various primary, secondary sludges in industrial or municipal wastewater is a very big question. And many times those are left unattended, and that is how we think that we have dislocated pollution and immobilized pollution, but we always thought that we are treating pollution. We are not highly educated about what are the risks. and we don't count our risks and we don't research our risks. How clean is a very big question, which is a flip side of the coin of how much risk are you willing to take. Development for who and who will be held responsible if that development is not brought is a very, very central question to the entire debate related to development. And engineers generally run away from, they would like to take simply solve a differential equation, develop a model, or do analysis in laboratory, or do a good design, and they think that they have solved a problem. But actually, that is simply one aspect of the problem. Development for who and who will be held responsible indeed will be important. Systematic approach will be essential for achieving so-called sustainable development. That integrated approach we are not taking, and that definitely is our one limitation. Just to remember some of the great people in our country, what would, let us say, Gandhi say or Gandhi recommend about sustainable consumption? Because every time we always say that industries are polluting, forgetting that we are the consumers, therefore industries are producers. So consume smartly, minimize carbon footprint, minimize ecological impacts. Is your consumption sustainable? What will you not do and not use? Because most of the times in the school, in management schools, in engineering schools, we are teaching not to say no, only say yes. Always give some technological answer to everything. But we have not been a courageous and thoughtful people, a community, society, that we have decided these certain things we will not do because we are not ready. Certain things we will not use because we do not know how to solve problem of pollution or how to solve problem of consumption, or where it will not lead to social justice or environmental justice. And what will you hold above the familiar cost benefit analysis? It's extremely important for engineers to listen to it very carefully. Do not jump to defend your cost benefit analysis. Understand what are the real costs, and real costs are sometimes hidden. You do not know them. So as you know that I don't have to tell this audience that there is a huge amount of water pollution in our country, and in cities as well as villages. We are not attended to the problem of wastewater, and there are great gaps in our wastewater treatment. And in the interest of time, I will simply go ahead and say, you know that we are not treating our sewages properly. There may be very few places where we are satisfied or we can be satisfied, but most of the places we cannot be. So obviously, the technological alternatives need to be proper. Alternatives need to be developed, and obviously they should be low cost. They should be reliable and robust. They should be able to give. They should be able to give long-term performance. But more importantly, they should also provide some ecosystem services and not destroy our natural ecosystems. So therefore, we need to really discuss what are the sustainable solutions, are conventional solutions or centralized solutions, the sustainable solutions. That is where essentially I started working with it about 25 years back, and slowly my consciousness got developed. And what Professor Chandran Sundar Raj was mentioning about the 2000 in the beginning of this particular century, 20 years back, he reminded of a meeting in Pune. That time I was just a toddler in the field and just trying to learn. Learning continues though, but that time I really did not understand enough. And now slowly the things are becoming clear how to equate all the elements in a balanced manner. So what can knowledge enterprise do? And we are impressed with the byline which IIT Bombay puts on of Mahatma Gandhi on the website. We can shake the world in a gentle manner. So we are trying to do few things gently on the basis of whatever that we think we are able to do properly. And then let us hope that we will network with many friends. In my personal life, it is like Mohan, my friend, or so many such people, and then we can go to the destination for sure. One of the I stayed once at a time. I used to study many other natural treatment systems using stabilization ponds, polishing ponds, and I do not want to get into that. But finally, over the years, for 10, 12 years of research, finally I gravitated last 8-9 years, I started concentrating on constructed wetland because I thought that it was quite interesting and it was quite promising, and I was kind of getting more and more convinced. That is why I shortlisted constructed wetland as one of my focus areas. And there are many benefits. For example, it is obviously efficient resource utilization is achieved, improved microclimate is achieved, ecological upgradation also happens to the particular extent. Not much research has been done in this area, though. It is definitely a low cost and a decentralized alternative. And also it generates some kind of green areas in especially urban setting, which is most of the times missing. So the constructed wetlands can achieve grey water treatment, rainwater treatment, treatment of persistent organic pollutants, secondary treatment of wastewaters, nutrient recovery is possible up to some extent. Energy also is possible. One of my PhD students is currently working on it. Or we can definitely talk about excuse me, enhancement of ecological services. So this is what we can talk about. So far, unfortunately, our country and all over the world, for that matter, we have followed a linear economy model where every building, every structure would probably emit water into nearby water body, may it be a lake or a river, or many times only selected wherever there is a sewerage system available. It will be brought to a treatment plant, and then treated water will be put into the water body. And then small juggi jhopadis, hutments, slums, they will, because they are not connected to any trunk mains, finally they dispose without any treatment. And these kind of systems are there, which are most likely than not you will be able to find. And that is how we are seeing a linear approach. But a circular approach probably would try to do something gainful with every source of water. And then there are many ideas that one can come up. We have come up with few that we understand with our limited understanding, but I'm sure we all are creative people, and we can think of many ideas where, so to speak, you can close the loop. Earlier we were doing only things in linear fashion. Now we can envisage a loop system where there is circularity in use of treated water as a resource and do something good with it. So therefore we concentrated for almost last 10 years now, we have concentrated on the constructed wetland research in laboratories, and we have the open laboratory for the workstation for the constructed wetland research at our wastewater treatment pumping station. And we have several crates of this type, and which we call as the constructed wetland reactor, CW reactor, laboratory CW reactor, we name it. And then we have a box 0.6 meter wide and long, and 0.4 meter wide, and 210 millimeter water depth. This is how we have a box, and in which we conduct several experiments, several plants, about 11 species of plants I tried initially, different type of filling materials, media we tried, starting from ranging from sand, the road metal converted into small half-inch, quarter-inch, and 1-inch sizes, gradation of them, all that we tried. And then we gravitated to simpler ideas, more eco-friendly, where you simply take the old bricks, break it in 4 inches, 5 inches size, or cement concrete again from the debris, construction debris, and those kinds of things. And we have compared that with rock aggregates, with sand, and so many other conventional media. So we have conducted a lot of laboratory experiments by taking the live sewage or taking the synthetic sewage, and we have interpreted the data, kinetic data, and then we have come up with the rate constants for the degradation of BOD, COD, TKN, total phosphorus, so on and so forth. And so much of so many repeats of our experiments we have done, something like 400-500 experiments we have conducted with 6 times, 8 times repeats, with different type of data. And then we also interpreted kinetic data and estimated the rate constants and also the errors on the rate constant, because we had many experiments that we conducted. And based on that, we kind of developed a design protocol of the constructed wetlands. And I can go ahead and I can show you for each analyte we can do like that. And then the technology CW for reuse technology was born in a way that from laboratory constructed wetland reactors, we graduated to a pilot scale. And then here we have a 15-meter long and a 3-meter wide internal dimension and 0.6-meter deep. So whatever constructed wetland that you have seen earlier, most of them are much deeper. Ours is really very shallow. And this is horizontal subsurface for constructed wetland. From underground, a launder of, a pipe from the rising main tapped, the raw wastewater is coming, raw sewage is coming from IIT community. It is put here and then it goes out. Constructed wetland goes here. Here there is simple one tank, which has the level of water same as what is inside. You can see the level of water here, and the water overflows here. And this is a actually empty tank which goes out in case there is any choke on in the drain line. Then we have some buffer to work with, and it is also used sometimes for sampling. And this is for floating constructed wetland research. So actually, our constructed wetland CW for reuse ends here. So this is a pilot scale which is working from October of 2013. Past 7 years, it is working absolutely tirelessly, and no choking, no issue, absolutely. So we have gotten very good kinetic data from it, which we use to design further the more real scale constructed wetlands in life. So we could very quickly see there is a future role of constructed wetland. Definitely, it can become a part of the circular economy model. It is definitely resource oriented, because what you are doing is production of treated water, reusable water, rather than just wastewater treatment and then disposal. And then it has some ability to upgrade ecosystem. And the wetland itself is a patch of green, but the treated water can very easily, excess water can very easily be used for irrigation and supporting the woods and gardens in the city, and also for agriculture in rural areas. And then it can, up to some limited extent, it can also support economic development. So this was essentially the idea that we tried to pursue, and our experimental results were showing proper nutrient recovery, pathogen removal, and organic pollutant removal. And we realized that it was a low cost treatment. We did a lot of life cycle costing and life cycle assessment of our technology and compared that with several other conventional technologies, trickling filter, activated sludge, many other advanced treatments. We have done that. And some of our publications are available if you're interested. My email ID is very simple, asolekar@gmail.com. This is the advantage of having a odd surname known as Asolekar. There is nobody I know with my surname. So I got a very simple domain, asolekar@gmail.com. So you can simply send me an email and I will flood your mailbox with our reports and with our published papers. Huge amount of literature is available. If you yourself do constructed wetland, you probably get 30,000 or 60,000 entries in your literature search in your computer, and very few might be also from us. If you write to me, I'll send our entries to you very easily. So what do we achieve? Social, economic, and ecological benefits. That is what is the ultimate objective. Objective was not to treat wastewater, but objective was to achieve these ends. So this is what we tried to do, and then we became slightly more confident. Always, the person with partial knowledge is more confident. You know that. So we immediately implemented to a half city, half town level. So about 35,000 is the population of that town. So nearly half the population, which is more tight, and the older town, which is also connected to the weekly market area where a lot of other people come. So we tried to implement in a place called as Maswad, and that is where we actually implemented our thing. So town is quite spread off, but more tight town with small conventional houses, 2-story houses. So that wastewater basically, and also some people, every household has, or group of household also have have keep their own animals, and all that goes into the river, which is called as Manganga River. And this river is nearly dry. If you go any time of the year, it is only sandbed, nothing else. Out of last 7 years, only 3 years there was normal rain. Remaining 4 years, there was absolutely 20% rain, 10% rain, official drought declared by the state government, so on and so forth. So we are not really doing a big job. We are doing a very simple job, but the villagers gave a lot of support to us because one good NGO was our partner, and they were very generous to support us. And in fact, they came to us on their own by reading about our research in some newspaper published it, Hindustan Times and Times of India. So they came to us and then they said that, can we get this technology for our village? And we quickly went and our town, and we quickly went. And now the nearby 3 villages also have joined. And now there are 4 projects that are going in that small area within 2 kilometers radius. 4 projects are going on at the moment, but I'm showing you the oldest one, which is working since 2016 onwards continuously. So the old paradigm we have rejected, and we are going to new paradigm where we are treating the wastewater in constructed wetland and then sending it for various reuse application. And the new paradigm basically is to take all that water, put it into constructed wetland, don't let it go to river. And the local administration and also the revenue department, collector, everybody supported, Ministry of Urban Development of State of Maharashtra, everybody supported us. And we have created a 200-meter long constructed wetland, 5 meters wide, 200 meters long constructed wetland we have created. And then the water is let into that, and the treated water is taken for the municipal garden, and the place which is drought stricken for forever. This is the driest taluka of the Western Maharashtra, which is otherwise very green. That particular place, we have a most beautiful garden because of our treated wastewater. And we also are giving that treated water to the fodder camp, and the water is filled in tankers and it goes to the fodder camp. Fodder camp is because otherwise the animals are sold to butchers in every summer, and about 3,000 to 4,000 cattle are sold to butchers because farmers are not able to give them water and fodder. So the local NGOs start fodder camp, but they have to buy water in which they are not able to. 7 or 8 lakh rupees water per week they have to buy during summers, and that goes on until Diwali time sometimes, because the water is not there in the river. If water is not there in the river until there is rain, or until there is some other source of water, they are not able to take back their animals. So that is what happens. And also the biomass from here goes for the kettle. So we are giving, but it doesn't nearly satisfy the requirement, I must tell you. But water satisfies 100% the requirement, and excess water goes to the garden, and some water, whatever sometimes that we are not able to absorb, that goes, treated water goes to river. And they have now built a small weir here, and there is a small water reservoir here, which again is used by the local farmers to pump and give to local farms. So that water goes ultimately for the local irrigation. So there is full support from the villagers, township, municipal council, and also the Ministry of Urban Development. So everybody is supporting us. It is a very simple scheme. It is not a big deal. What we have done is a very simple work. You have constructed 9 constructed wetland beds, and there is a bed of a gray water. I mean the untreated water, and then it is a treated water. And basically the bed, we have made the plumbing in such a way, if we want higher quality water, we can connect them in series. Others, we can take them in parallel, and then we can bring them here. Different seasons, we have to do different things. And we have trained the local people to be able to do that. Initially, we created such beds. This was because of the water that was left. It was very, very bad summer. So some water was left from one river to other river into Manganga, and then it was flowing in that river. This particular picture we have taken because this was the case only for 10 days, 15 days. Then again, it started becoming dry. But we constructed a constructed wetland on the edge of the river, and there are 9 beds. These are the beds that we put our plants, and then subsequently they grew and they become very beautiful. They are bearing flowers now, and they are absolutely established. And the a cooperative society of 30 women are basically village women are basically looking after. They practically own it. All the rights are given by the municipal council to them, and they are looking after maintaining it. So it has created about 30 30 part-time green jobs and 4 full-time for men. Some manual work. 4 men are there. So 30 women and 4 men are working on this. We had to take a lot of efforts and teach the women. A local bank is there which helped us. They gave us their facilities. It's a Grameen bank. It's a rural bank. In fact, this bank was considered for Nobel Prize along with Abdus Yunus from Bangladesh. Very, very high quality people. So they gave their conference facility, and we started training the boys, college boys, 12th grade boys, girls, and also women who are the owners of the society. And then you have the reuse application is possible because water is all right quality. Obviously, it is not body contact, or it is not anyway drinking water quality, but for animals, for irrigation, for fodder camp, for gardening, absolutely, this water is very good quality. And this is the fountain in the garden, and this is the tanker which goes to the fodder camp, and it is taking from the storage tank, the green color tank that I was showing you in my sketch. And this is how it is taken into the tanker. And this is the gate of the garden, which is just adjoining. These are some of the pictures of the garden. And then you have, this is the overview of the garden. This is the river, which is dry. And then you have our beds are shown here. Our central tanks are shown here. And this is the garden that was developed by the municipal council basically by the NGOs and the town citizens. And this is a beautiful garden that they have developed, which is called as Maswad Garden. And people from nearby towns also come here by ST bus, and they would like to visit here once in a while. School trips come here. This is a very beautiful place. All sorts of plants they have put, and it is a very well. This water is actually our recycled water, and they have a first fountain of the town in the garden because of our water tank. It goes into garden. It is used for irrigation. Excess water again comes back into the tank. It goes further for fodder camp and so many other applications. We have done a lot of active research on this, and we have developed our rate constants and design modules based on the real life plant, not only laboratory crate reactors, not only the pilot plant on IIT Bombay campus, but also the real life system. We have created it. Similar thing we have implemented in a case study in a pilgrimage place known as Katel, where the pilgrimage, this is a combined toilet. This is women block, and behind that is the men block. And all the people who come for pilgrimage use that. So their wastewater, we constructed a septic tank. Earlier it was simply flowing into a river, but we took it in the septic tank, and septic tank inlet we have given to 1 bed. They do not have at the moment funds, but actually the place is there for 3 beds. Only 1 bed is there. And then that bed is absolutely working fine. And these are the beds these are the toilet blocks that I told you. This is our bed. And then our water is basically, they have acquired now a small 2-acre piece of land where they are growing grass, vegetables, and grass is given to cows, and all the requirements for the holy place. The entire the free food is given to the people who come for pilgrimage, because it is an interior place. All the things are generated using the irrigation of this particular land. So it is very much a part of the circular economy. So again, the details we can always share you. There are several publications, but basically it is creating a water which is good enough for irrigation, and we are using it. Pathogenicity also goes down because of roots and pack bed. So that also helps in a way. It becomes slightly more human friendly. So constructed wetlands are seen to be quite useful. and they can be used for ecological restoration and rejuvenation. That is what is the quick conclusion we drew. One of the flagship projects of my group is case study 3, which is Mansagar Lake, where we are trying to uh, show the restoration of and rejuvenation of the Jaipur lake, which is called Mansagar. And this is the Raja Mansingh had constructed a summer palace in the water body, which is called Jal Mahal. Jal means water, Mahal is palace. So Jal Mahal, water palace. That is, those who have visited Jaipur, and from Jaipur to Amer Fort, when you are coming, Jaipur is on this side. So when you are coming to Amer Fort, this is the road. You're going to Amer Fort outside. Just 4 kilometers here, there is a court of Jaipur, and about 3 kilometers ahead is the Hawa Mahal monument. And then you cannot miss this particular lake. It was a cesspool of wastewater earlier. Entire Jaipur city's wastewater was coming here, but we worked for 8.5 years, and we have instituted a mechanized treatment plant with the polishing using constructed wetland, and then that water is put in the lake, and lake is very beautiful. That case study, this is what we, when we went there, this is what it was looking like. This was the monument Jal Mahal, and it was completely, all the muck and sludge was around, and there was hardly any water, only silt and sludge was there. The lake was dead, and you can see here, artist has taken a picture of some of the other beautiful canopies and places which are put inside the lake, but you are seeing the lake bed. This is the road which I'm saying. Amer Fort is somewhere here behind this, and the Jaipur city is behind. So what we did was that we requested the photographer, the artist, to place the camera tripod in the same place and take the new pictures now. Now this is the rejuvenated lake that you're seeing. Now past 10 years, the lake is rejuvenated. This is what it looks like. It was looking like this earlier. This is the Jal Mahal up close if you go. Now the Jal Mahal looks like this. It was rejuvenated at the cost of some 20 crore rupees. And this is the first public-private partnership PPP mode project, which was developed in Rajasthan. And very rarely our government spends money and things become successful. But this is first time the community has spent money, municipal corporation, tourism department, Ministry of Environment Forest gave 8 crore rupees as a seed grant. And totally nearly 100 crore rupees have been spent. And this lake has been completely rejuvenated. This was the earlier picture, as I told you. This is the new picture now. This is the present picture, and this is how Jal Mahal looks, a very beautiful place. But that is not what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you that now it is a very big, the archaeology department owns this particular monument, and through PPP model, it was rejuvenated, the monument also. But the more important thing, what I'm trying to tell you is that so many birds are now endemic there. Jaipur is a desert. I don't have to tell you. Sand dunes are just kilometers away from Jaipur. It's an absolutely dry desert ecosystem. But 23 species of birds are endemic. And some of the bird watchers are surprised to see that such kind of birds have come to that particular lake. And this is the documentation done by WWF Foundation. And they are basically very proud of this particular project, and a lot of research on birds habitat has been done here. There is a lot to talk about this particular project and how the ecological rejuvenation was brought along with the water rejuvenation of lake topic. But in the interest of time, I need to conclude my presentation. Therefore, I'm not showing you more on this. So I asked you a basic question earlier, innovation for who? And that is where I think the scientists, engineers, and development professionals have to think together. I believe personally that water and wastewater management can be used as a theme for social engineering. And we can do a business for justice. You should not now think in 21st century business for making money or business for personal benefit. One can do also business for justice, and that justice is broader justice, not only to humans, as I explained to you earlier, but justice to ecosystem. And the work is in progress. What we have achieved so far is nothing, my friends. Please forgive me if I have said something wrong. My knowledge is limited, approach is very simple, but the aim is very high. that we would like to make innovation so that this is my personal choice, is this is my constituency. If these girls are able to go to school, because government is giving free education to girl children, but up to 12th standard in Maharashtra and all over the country, it is Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is there in the central government. All states are giving even more money to it. Maharashtra also is putting a lot of money. Still, girls are not able to. This is the same village. People are not able to go send their daughters to school because they have to send their daughters in the morning to fetch water or to fetch a headload of twigs so that their chulha can work or their drinking water is available. So we need to really do something for water, and we need to think in a more integrated way so that our constituency wins. This is my constituency, and this is really, until this is satisfied, really what all I'm telling you is simply words and there is no result. But this is just half of the story. The next story is, you are seeing there is a python. This is python in our constructed wetland in the pilot scale, which you saw earlier on IIT Bombay campus. And we call this python was sleeping for 3 days. And this is Canna indica planted in my this thing. These are the concrete and brick pieces that you can see. We have hundreds of pictures we have taken of this particular python. This fellow was sleeping there for 3 days. Maybe it swallowed some waterfowl or something, some rabbit or something, and then he was basically digesting it, so sleeping here. But then we called the people. There is a national park in Mumbai, about 10 kilometers away from IIT Bombay, which is called Sanjay Gandhi National Park. So we called the chief conservator from there. Because of my ecological work and so many other Supreme Court related activities, I knew him. I used to use his expert opinion. So I requested him to come and rescue this particular python. When he came and his team came, they actually put a tent there. They waited until this fellow started movement, and then they picked him up, picked this fellow up, and put it into a basket and took it into Sanjay Gandhi National Park, and again released him. This is the second citation in the 60 years known citation of this type of python on the edge of Powai Lake. This is the second citation. Only one citation was there about 25 years back. It was in one tribal village adjoining, which is called Are Colony, which is in adjoining Powai Lake. So when this type of python was seen, and then again it was rescued and put into Sanjay Gandhi National Park. Second time it is seen on the edge of Powai Lake. The restricted wetland is hardly 100 meters away from the water body of Powai. And he said, what is this tank for? And said that this is the wastewater treatment plant. And he simply did not believe. So his researchers and his team came and they asked us to remove the bricks from here. And they looked at the water, and then they were convinced that it is actually wastewater treatment plant, because these animals are never seen sleeping near wastewater. They do not go close to wastewater. In fact, one of the reasons why these animals are not found in Powai Lake, because Powai Lake is polluted, and they want to steer clear from polluted lake. They only need clean lake, a clean water body. But here it is sleeping for 3 days. He could not believe. So he said, you are treating wastewater. I would call that you are treating wastewater. You are treating water, good quality water. And he was very happy. And I thought that was the biggest award anybody could give. This python has given the biggest award of my life, that this fellow would not go closer to anything which is dirty, which is smelly, but he's sleeping very happily in my wetland for 3 days. So it shows that constructed wind developed by us, my students, my team, it probably is in the right direction. And this is all I just wanted to tell you. After all, we can always do something, but doing something that gives us also spiritual happiness, also intellectual pleasure and intellectual fulfillment is a rare thing, which some of us spiritual teachers have. And I'm simply enjoying my work at IIT Bombay. How can I thank you for listening to me and giving me your precious 1 hour? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Asulekar. In fact, I'm sure the participants, the level of interaction that we see in the chat box, I think it speaks for itself for the presentation's accessibility to the participants. And now, sir, I would like to go into the questions that the participants have raised. I hope I can go one by one, sir.
Sure.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure, sir. The first question is from Mr. Ganesh Pandian. The question is, what is the approximate area required for treating 1 MLD of domestic wastewater treatment through the constructed wetland?
One MLD is 1,000 meter square, 1,000 meter cube per day. So typically, depending on the quality, you need to have 1 meter square to 2 meter square, and sometimes 2.5 meter square. If you want to also remove the nutrients and phosphorus, 2.5 meter square you need per meter cube of water. I'm just giving a thumb rule.
Okay.
But if you have a situation, we can run our model and we can tell you more accurate and more optimized this thing area. But you can say 1 meter square to 2.5 meter square per meter cube of wastewater.
Sure, sir. I mean, in fact, there's a second question. So during the presentation, we had spoken about the rate constants which are found, rate constants which are found for different species of Canna indica. So the question from Mr. Prashanta Mohapatra is that can the rate constants found through this study be used elsewhere, or is it a case by case basis, sir?
Wonderful. They in fact, the whole idea was treating with so many plants, and then finally Canna indica is only for the kind of area that we are living in. But I'm not that knowledgeable to tell you that, oh, this will be definitely working in Tamil Nadu or the Kashmir. Our country is continental, so every ecosystem has its own special features. So not only only 18-20 people at the moment are working on this particular theme, but there are probably 2,000 or 20,000 people are required all over the country to the idea further and try different plants. But answer is yes. The good part is that there are various species of Canna indica. We are not seeing very dramatic difference in their rate constants. So they are comparable. So even if you have a slightly different way of species available, that's one of our projects. So, and by the way, you are seeing cartel. I have so many case studies. I have just shown you 3 case studies. But every case study we have designed it on the drawing board first, and then we have implemented because of our research. So it is truly a laboratory to pilot to field. So what all I am doing is not to get a PhD to my students, but it is actually to improve the practice of implementation. And this is very scientifical and very rationally done. And we know which is part of the design equations have to be iteratively solved, and which can be solved straightforward by plugging into equation. All those things are there. Little bit of that glimpse of that you can see in R.C. Vala Asolekar 3rd edition on the wastewater treatment. A chapter is there on this.
Sure, sir.
A lot of other literature that is dated 10 years back to 14 years back, but we can send you more recent. Lot of papers are there. If somebody is interested, please go ahead. If you want any assistance from us, we will be very happy to help you in doing a realistic plan. If you are doing realistic, we put our time so that you will not unnecessarily waste your money and the footprint.
Sure, sir. And now we move on to the disinfection part. So the question is from Professor Hadas from University of Tel Aviv. So the question is, was there any measurements of bacterial counts, especially when we use the treated wastewater from the wetlands for use in irrigation and also for feeding the cows, for the cattle?
Wonderful. I think it's a very good question. 2 of my students, 2 master students and 1 PhD student is currently very actively working on this topic, which is micropollutants and also the microbial trace microbial pollution. It is not a practice other than drinking water. In wastewater, we are not still tracing the micropollutants, trace organic pollutants, or persistent organic pollutants, persistent toxic substances. India is signatory of all those treaties, but all these treaties are not traced in wastewater very actively. There has been some research for past 5-8 years in India. They are tracing that the trace pollutants in city sewage, and they are trying to quantify them, and they are trying to see what is the extent. In fact, we are going a step forward. We are standing on the shoulders of those scientists, and we are trying to see what is the effectiveness of constructed wetland in removing those commonly found heavy metals or commonly found organic pollutants or residues of medicines and things like that. At the moment, we have used a very simple measure like MPN. We have not gone much ahead, but in the presentation only that is used. But currently, my PhD student and master students are working on slightly more involved ways of analysis, and more specific species are being traced, which are typically used for drinking water related measurements.
Sure, sir. In fact, there are many questions with regards to the micropollutants. There are many questions. I hope this answer sort of answers those questions which are raised by the participants. And there is another question by Dr. Subbalakshmi. This with regards to the wetlands that are used for rice. So, is the natural wetlands performance comparable to the constructed wetlands performance? I mean, where do they diverge?
It's a very yeah, it's a very high quality question. Yes. In fact, I spent about 6 or 8 years, because I am a chemical engineer turned environmental. I kind of was intrigued by seeing natural wetlands. So I identified several natural wetlands and also looked at some of the constructed wetlands which have become like natural wetland because they were neglected. So more than 144 locations we studied, and from north to south and east to west, we went to such locations and we studied such plants. And we realized that the design approach for the engineered constructed wetlands can be definitely learned from the natural wetlands. And that's how we have gone ahead and graduated into the constructed wetlands. But the principles are same. Only advantage is that the kind of method that we are using in CW for use technology, that our constructed wetlands are anti-clog. I can do every wetland. Only exception is our wetland, because we have what we did was that we look for what are the problems of each wetland type. And 144 wetland typified. In fact, the beautiful publication, even that also I can share with you if somebody sends me an email. Typified first the problems of the wetland, and the typologies of failures we philosophize. And then for each typology, what is the remedy? And those all remedies are inbuilt into our model. So our model is a reverse engineering, that we studied how nature does it, how people did they ignore and what happened, how the wetlands failed earlier. So all those problems we tried to remove from our design. And that's how we said, oh, clogging, so how to make it anti-clogging. Less microbial load, how to increase microbial load. Less root mass, how to increase more root mass. Less foliage, how to increase more foliage. So we tried to go, typified all the failures and problems from the natural constructed wetlands and failed natural wetlands and failed constructed wetlands. And then from that, we developed this technology. So answer is yes. Definitely, one can think of applying it to a large system also. The real difficulty, the negative side of constructed wetland is footprint. You may not have a footprint. Suppose I want to do it in Mumbai or Madras. How will I do it? There's no easy way to do it. So therefore, one has to kind of combine the natural, combine the natural treatment system with the mechanized treatment. And even that experiment also we have done in city of Jaipur, that they have a proper Doraliver plant, primary and secondary treatment, and then water was not good enough to put into lake. So then polishing was given by constructed wetland. So all sorts of combination technology we have tried, and on a very large scale. That plant that plant is 8.5 MLD.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is possible. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And now we have a question.
Does it answer a little bit? Little bit answer is there for the questions.
Yes, sir. Yes. In fact, now we move on to the next question, which is about the use of fish in constructed wetlands, especially because we have examples like East Kolkata wetlands, wherein the aquaculture goes hand in hand with a natural wetland. Is there any examples of constructed wetlands and aquaculture going hand in hand, sir?
Yeah, no, it is not possible because my kind of technology it has packing in the bed, so fish cannot survive. The Calcutta wetlands, which local people call Bheri. I have a published publication on that also. We have studied very extensively for 2 years. For 6 seasons, we studied it. Bheris are basically they are something much comparable with West Appalachian ponds rather than constructed wetland. Although they have classified them as a wetland, it is something like a wetland not having vegetation in them. They are mostly like West Appalachian ponds, and they have a place there. I'm not very sure whether West Appalachian pond can be an answer to a large city's wastewater treatment. I am not in favor of that. Somebody wants to repeat the question. I mean the method of Bheris to in some other location. And if I were to give my expert opinion, I will go against it. But that is historically done, and then therefore we studied. It has taught us something, and there is something to learn from it.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, with cognizance of the time, so we close the Q&A session with this. And now I invite Dr. Nupur, who is the Vice Chair of IEEE Indian Chapter, for the vote of thanks. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jayant. And it's my pleasure and proud privilege to propose the vote of thanks for the webinar today. And first of all, sir, we all are very grateful to you on behalf of IEEE India chapter and all the delegates present here. We are grateful to you for your enlightening talk. And it was a talk in which we could see so many aspects, particularly the 5 aspects you talk about: the circular economy, women empowerment, reusing the treated water, rural wastewater treatment you have particularly mentioned, which is very rare in the talks these days, and using the constructed wetland as a example in front of us. So we are really, it's eye-opening. And also, sir, you very well emphasize on the need for the public partnership and the democracy in environmental upgradation and environmental justice, which for us is something, it could come from professors like you only, sir. With your vast experience, you could bring so many aspects and the 5 Ps to achieve SDGs. And also you brought food for thought in the river and lake rejuvenation and environmental governance. And the extensive work which you have presented, as expected from IIT professor, sir, it's really very encouraging for most of us as water professionals. So we look forward to your guidance and continued communication. Thank you once again, sir.